Well, hello, it's Stephanie here. We've got a beginner's guide to needles and thread in this video. We're going to start by looking at the kind of pins and needles that you might want to think about using. I tend to use only glass-headed pins. I like the fact that if needed, you could iron over them, although you're probably advised not to, but nothing bad will happen. I use this really teeny pin cushion that a friend bought me, and I keep a few needles in there. These are some of my favourites. They've got a golden eye. The eye is the name of the bit where the thread goes through, and of course the business end is really sharp if it's the kind of needle that you want to use for normal sewing. I tend to get my needles quite cheaply from one of these needle wheels. I've got several of them around, and I have cut out and stuck on the back what they're called. I don't really mind what they're called, I just use the one that will fit the thread that I'm going to use. Depending on my sewing project, depends on the thread. I tend to use polyester thread only. This is a very, very cheap variety, but it's good enough for the kind of garment sewing or even sometimes quilting that I do. Sometimes people say you should match cotton thread to cotton and polyester thread to poly fabric, but I don't mind what I use. I have quite a lot of different threads to pick from, and I've even got some of these older threads. I tend not to use them because the thread quality itself has deteriorated over time, but they sure are pretty in the sewing room. These are my embroidery threads. I keep them in this beautiful box, and I keep them all jumbled up because I love to see the colours all together. When you originally buy embroidery floss, it comes in a beautiful skein like this, and you simply pull out straight as much as you need. I tend to do just one arm's length from fingers to chin is what I tend to do, and then you know that that's just enough to keep good control. What you do need to know is embroidery floss is actually made up of 6 different strands. If you're doing something like counted cross stitch, you only need 2 strands. But mostly I'm going to demonstrate using all 6 strands. It gives a really, really bright, vibrant, colourful look. There are several different ways to split your floss, but I use the way that my mother taught me because it's a good way, and I take one strand at a time. So pinch the main bit that you're getting the strand out of between your thumb and finger really tightly. And you can see it's all bunching up, but it is not knotting. And that's important. Smooth it down when it's done and leave that one carefully somewhere. You're going to take out another one, join them together. And then what you do is you end up with no knots and a really smooth floss that gives a really nice shimmer when you sew with it. A lot of the stitches that we're going to use, you actually want to see the thread. That's me just smoothing down the 2. And then you can keep coming back to that original whirl. It's got 4 left now, and take another few. Don't forget, you can always mix your colours together. A little bit like an artist can with their colour palette. This is 2 navy blue, 1 light blue, and a yellow. It gives a variegated, interesting look to your work, and it might be a look that you're going for. So we're going to talk about how to thread your needle now. It's quite straightforward when you get the knack, but it really is a good skill. First of all, pick the right kind of needle. Make sure that the eye is big enough to take the thread size that you're going to use, especially when using embroidery floss. The bit you're not going to see is I'm going to lick the end of my threads so that they are all together and really squeeze them between my thumb and finger. Can you see that you can't see much thread? And I kind of push the eye of the needle down onto the thread rather than push the thread through the eye of the needle, if that makes sense. Just practice and you will get better, but have a little bit of patience with it. Now, this is a little bit controversial because lots and lots of people hate to have knots behind their work. I am not one of those people. I'm very happy to tie a knot. So I grab the bottom end of the thread, wrap it 3 times around my needle and pull it down. I'm making sure that I'm pinching my thumb and finger together, and that holds the knot, and almost as if by magic, hey presto, there's a good size knot. And now you're ready to sew. One thing that we sometimes use are embroidery hoops. They can either be made out of plastic or made out of wood. I happen to have a wooden one here. They come in all sorts of different diameters, different sizes, but they all work on the same principle. This one's got a screw thread. So the outer hoop is adjustable and the inner hoop is a fixed size. The inner hoop goes underneath the fabric and the top hoop goes over the top. And the reason why you'd want to use an embroidery hoop are for several reasons. A, it can be easier to hold your fabric. It can also keep your fabric quite taut. It makes it easier to do some kinds of stitches, but I don't use one a lot of the time. And you would really want to be careful on pushing this kind of embroidery hoop over a knit fabric like a t-shirt or a sweatshirt. You wouldn't want to pull it as tight as I'm pulling here. This is an offcut of old jeans. You can see the pocket in the corner, and denim can take a lot of wear and tear. Make sure you've got it tight enough, a bit like a drum. And now you're ready to sew. So thanks for watching, and now it's your time to sew.